want to continue our talk about GMRS radio and its uses, right? So today we're going to dive into, that world of GMRS in some real life scenarios from the news to where GMRS absolutely saved lives. Like, it played a crucial role in life-saving activities. I looked back kind of the past 5 years, just a quick search, and pulled out the top 3 that popped up from natural disasters and just unexpected crises that just popped up. So having radios absolutely provides an invaluable tool during the moment of crisis. And I've talked lightly, apologies, I'm in Budapest, Hungary right now, sitting on the balcony in my hotel room. But the radios play an invaluable role, and they are an invaluable tool for the communication and rescue. And obviously there's other ways, right? There's HF radios, there's FRS, there's just the bottom line, rescue, like a business band or like a federal or state or government bands that they use. But these were real life scenarios where people had a radio, and that's what they used, and others had radios, repeaters, things like that, and they used that to communicate, to get themselves out of a sticky situation, for the lack of a better term. So GMRS, as I said before, is General Mobile Radio Service. It's a licensed radio service that allows for short distance communications for the most part using handheld radios. Unlike standard FRS walkie-talkies, it has a little bit more range to it. GMRS offers that range through repeaters, just some of the radios themselves, even being at 5 watts. I've shown you my Midland radio that I just swear by, that just has shown me above and beyond that a 5 watt max output radio can really be the perfect thing to have in that awful situation. It can really reach out, and I'm going to do a range test and show you one-on-one one of these days when I get the opportunity to sit still at the house and show you just how powerful those things could be. So let's take a look at some of those real life stories. I'm obviously reading off of a screen. I got some news articles that I'm going to scroll through here. So just as my story played out, right? Hurricanes, when you guys hear me talk about the way I prepare for those power outages. I prepare for kind of the blackout scenario, not the apocalypse, but just like real life things that I have encountered along the way. And the first one at the top of the list, it happened back in 2020. So for hurricane communication, so during Hurricane Laura in 2020, one second, let me get to the details to it. So yeah, in Louisiana, during Hurricane Laura, GMRS radios played a crucial role in coordinating rescue efforts in areas like Lake Charles and surrounding communities. With cell towers down, these radios enabled emergency responders to communicate effectively and provide timely assistance. So what happened? So obviously cell towers were down, power outages were widespread. The radios, this is reports from the people, they enabled emergency responders to respond to individuals, right? You couldn't call 911. People needed assistance immediately. So one notable instance involved a local volunteer group of GMRS radio enthusiasts, and they relayed information between shelters and rescue teams, ensuring that resources were distributed effectively, that those in need received timely assistance. So that was a 2020 Lake Charles, Louisiana Hurricane Laura scenario. So that is much like our story, how not at the time, it wasn't GMRS, it was HF radio, to where we had a person who was actually giving the community some information along the way, where they heard, hey, FEMA was coming to do a drop. Actually, the National Guard was coming in, sent by FEMA with supplies to drop off. So that drop-off locations wasn't that far from where we were. It's just there was no way to communicate. So until someone found out through those methods, and then there was the, finding out, hey, after time went on, of hey, where is some fuel, right? We had to drive 2 states over to go get fuel and get some resources, and ended up kind of, taking a big trailer, taking a bunch of fuel tanks from everybody that had one that needed it. So we went and got generator fuel, things of that nature. So that's the idea is, in those hurricane outages, widespread hurricane outages, any radio at that point could play a role. But what you have is you have more people. It's the value of GMRS that I've talked about before, is you have more people that have FRS walkie-talkies that they bought for camping, or their kids were playing with them. They just wanted them, right? They saw them at the store. They looked cool. They bought them. They got them in their house. They dig around, find some AA batteries, and throw in these radios. And then they have, radios like this to where they're monitoring, whatever, right? Maybe not this wild, but they have a radio to where they're listening to the news, but at the same time, if they want to talk to someone, they had those walkie-talkies. They weren't ham radio operators to run HF or long range HF or long range VHF or even UHF at that point. It could happen, that could be the case, but 9 times out of 10, unless you're someone who's bought a Baofeng radio with no license and you've saved all these channels into your radio, you're not going to be on the ham band, right? You're grabbing what you have and you're calling out on that walkie-talkie hoping somebody's on the other end, and that's where GMRS sharing that FRS channels and frequencies really comes into play. So let me jump into the second topic here. So 2021, California wildfires. So it says in Sonoma County, Napa Valley in Northern California, devastating wildfires that I remember in 2021. GMRS radios were crucial in the evacuation efforts in Sonoma County and the Napa Valley. Residents relied on these radios to stay informed about the fire movements, evacuation orders. In one case, a community network of GMRS radio enthusiast, users helped coordinate the safe evacuation of several families from a remote area where cell service was unavailable. The radios provided a reliable means of communication, allowing residents to receive updates and instructions from emergency services, right? So wildfires, it wasn't about getting resources, it was about where to go and when to go there, because I can only imagine, I have no idea, I've never been in that scenario per se. I have been in a fire outbreak to where I was helping fight the fire before in a local neighborhood where the wind was just taking it and blowing it. And I'm sure it was that times a billion on wildfires that are spreading through a forest. So, with that is smoke's everywhere. The sky's red if it's dark. Like, you don't really know where to go or what to do. You don't know that if you're running in one direction or trying to flee in one direction, you may be actually going right into the danger zone. And having those radios and having people that were coordinating with people with the GMRS radios, with folks that just had, like I said, with the just standard bubble pack walkie-talkies, being able to coordinate that, relay messages, right? So they can't talk over repeaters because the FRS radios aren't capable of doing that. But your GMRS radio shares those frequencies again, and they can jump on a repeater and find information and then relay that back to the people, telling them where to go and how to navigate that. So yeah, super impactful for that situation. So now we have the absolute blackout scenario of a hurricane, widespread hurricane damage, powers out, cells out. And now you have wildfire, where you're actually running from something that is trying to kill you actively, to where with a hurricane, right, for the most part, a hurricane comes in, it does some damage. Obviously, there's some during scenarios, but that thing moves on, and then you have the aftermath to deal with. With this, the folks are really trapped, and they need to know how to navigate where the danger is. This third one is 2022 in Rocky Mountains, Colorado. A group of hikers in the Rocky Mountains used GMRS radios to call for help after getting lost in the rugged terrain that they were hiking on. The radios allowed them to communicate their exact location to the rescue teams, facilitating a successful operation. The hikers were able to provide real-time updates of their condition and their surroundings, which significantly added to the rescue efforts, right? You could really pinpoint, bring folks to where you are. And if you are a GMRS user and you have, there's other means also to where you could throw out your GPS locations. And there's actually, I know like VHF radios, there are some marine VHF radios that have signal beacons, or it sends out your GPS if you hit a button. Normally use those on a boat, but there are some GMRS radios that have similar capabilities. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some out there. I haven't used it, so I don't know the capabilities of how you can do that, honestly. But I wouldn't be surprised if before long you'll see GMRS radios be able to do something very similar, to where you could send out a GPS location. Let's see, the hikers were able to provide, yep, already read that. This incident highlighted the importance of having reliable communication tools in remote areas. So with that, right, you're in a mountain, so you have the widespread hurricane, wet, everything's possibly flooded, but end of the story there is there's no cell and there's no power. You have the California wildfire, which is most likely also no cell and no power. And now you have absolute remote out in the middle of nowhere, where that there's no cell or no power. And I know a lot of folks use the Garmin spots and other satellite communications, and if you really want to ramp up those type scenarios, getting a satellite a sat phone is probably money ahead if you do that on the regular. I don't. I'm good enough with a radio, and having a radio and practicing with it and understanding when I go to a certain area. I always look up repeaters. I try to find out the use of radio in that area in case I need it. So really understanding your infrastructure there is really important. But with this, you have a mountain rescue, where getting lost on a mountain is, I can imagine, I've going up to, like Cottonwood Canyon in Salt Lake City. Me and my wife were exploring on a trip up there once, and I could see just how quickly, and even going into to Tennessee, the Tennessee mountains, I could see how quickly, if you were off the beaten path, how you could lose your way. And obviously the up and the down, because hey, I'm going uphill, so I know I'm going up the mountain per se, but you don't know if you're actually on the right path. You could be veering in the wrong direction. You could end up walking out of a brush, boom, I'm on a cliff and I can't go any farther. I could absolutely see where that would be just a life-threatening, right? You could just get spun around, and essentially, people die, all the time in that scenario. So they're in a remote spot. The terrain is rough. It's not like a desert or flatlands where you just can keep walking and you'll eventually run into something. It's literally, you could run into cliffs or run into more terrain that you can't get past and you can't traverse. But of these stories, these are, like I said, these were the 3 top stories that popped up when I searched for this. These, and you can look them up yourself. But the detailed accounts that these things bring, that should show you the value and the depth and the context of why GMRS is so important, and how it can be absolutely life-saving. So, I've already given some tips just telling the story, right? Just you need to there's 4 major points here that I wanted to share that really led to these 3. When I looked at these 3 stories, what did I get out of them? What were the 4 points that I practice on the regular? What do I do personally with not only my GMRS radio, but any radio that I have with communication mindset? Because I don't just do one thing. I look at multiple things. I really strive to be that person who helped me one time of, I have so many methods of communication at my disposal that I am very familiar with, or I frequent it and I understand it well enough that I will be very efficient in the moment in using it. So the number 1 point that I like is knowing your frequencies. So what does that mean? So with if you're if we're talking solely GMRS, just understanding the GMRS range, there's literally only 22 frequency sets. There's 22 channels, 8 of which are actually repeaters also. And we can talk about repeaters another day. I've said that before. That's kind of a detailed video, I feel like, that needs a little bit of visual effects. So I'm going to, draw out some flow charts and work that out to kind of show you. But knowing your frequencies and familiarizing yourself with the local repeaters. If you're a GMRS user, understanding the repeaters. If you're not a GMRS licensed user and you actually can't use the repeater, it's good to get on something like My GMRS or TexasGMRS.net and join up, get a username. You don't necessarily have to pay anything. There are some sites that ask you to pay, some sort of member fee, some small member fee, or at least a donation, like the TexasGMRS.net, and that money goes to actually maintaining those repeaters, so that if you ever find yourself in a situation, that repeater's there. But the idea is, even if you're not a licensed GMRS user, you could get the frequency that it was on in here, so you don't have to have any special tone to hear the repeater coming to you, so that if there were anything going on in the area and anyone was talking about it, you would at least be able to hear it. And that if there are users that are out there, and let me just give you for instance, a scenario, right? Still on point number 1. Let's say there was a repeater on the channel set 15, which is actually the 462.550 channel. It's channel 15 on the walkie-talkie. The repeater obviously uses a tone to talk in and out, but you don't need a tone to hear it. Everyone can hear it with a clear, without that privacy tone added. And I advise you to not ever set a privacy tone unless something is getting on your nerves. If there's someone else talking or there's some interference, maybe using a privacy tone, but I would say just go to another channel. If you're not a licensed GMRS user, just swap channels. Take the privacy tones off. Those things are garbage, and they honestly should only be used in the sense of a nuisance, for one, or if you are actually a licensed user and you're trying to get into a repeater and hear it clearly, you can set those tones. But on that first point, knowing your frequencies is understanding, hey, there's a GMRS repeater in the area. I know that I'm going to use that frequency to talk simplex. It's radio to radio. It's called simplex. That way, if I'm in an emergency and I start calling out on that frequency, there's probably a user out there that can still hear you, because that's a little complicated, but there is more likely a chance, and this is just a good tip for this point number 1, there is more likely of a chance that if there's a repeater in the area and you are talking simplex on that same frequency, that there's someone out there that is listening to you. They can hear you, and that is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. You're not running from the apocalypse. You're not hiding from zombies. You're out there trying to have a good time, and you want to know that there's some comfort on the other end of that radio. There's someone more likely going to be there. If nothing else, swap to one channel over and use that as you're talking amongst your crowd. And if you get in trouble, then you hop to that channel. So if the repeater is on the 550, the .550 set, 462.550, then that's channel 15. You know to swap to 15 and call out, and in hopes that someone can hear you. Realistically, maybe not using that, like I said, I don't know. Something to think about. Not using it for your common chit-chat, because then, the user that might be listening to the repeater that can hear you may just turn you off because they don't want to listen to you, but because you're not talking to them. But in the event of an emergency, jump to that repeater channel and call out for help. Number 2, always keeping your radio charged, right? Keeping it ready. Having a spare battery cable. Me personally, when I got into this game, I was just buying radios. They look cool, and like this one has this feature and this one has that feature. Me personally, all the radios that I own, or all the ones that I buy recently, are all USB-C, chargeable, rechargeable, which also match my phone. So if I've got a power bank that charges my phone, like I do, this radio that I have right here is USB-C rechargeable. It's also a Bluetooth speaker. So if I am going camping or outdoors or somewhere, it's small enough. It's really small. You can see it in my hand. It sounds really good as a Bluetooth speaker, but it's also a shortwave radio, a FM radio, AM radio, airband, all sorts of things. It's a shortwave radio in the palm of your hand, USB-C rechargeable, yeah. So it's multi-purpose, multi-use, but having your radios charged and having a way to charge your radios. A lot of times we would say have a spare battery on hand. That's not a bad idea either. I have had a battery go bad on a trip. I was charging it, and the actual charge, the USB-C broke, and it stopped charging, and I didn't have a radio. I didn't have a backup. So that kind of sucked. Now, mind you, it was a cheap radio, and you get what you pay for. But yeah, always being ready to charge. So knowing your frequency and keeping your radio ready and charged and able to power it in the event of long range. I will say this, a lot of these radios will run for, a good 2 days, 3 days. If you're not transmitting on them, if you're just listening, they'll run for quite a long time just sitting there idle. 3, practice your communication. I said before that I have just interweaved radio into my everyday life. I have a radio in my Jeep. I have a spare radio in my Jeep. I have a handheld that, if, doing something just casually like, hey, we're too far. I'm not screaming at you. I'm not going to call you on my phone. I'm here. Take that. Guide me in here, whatever that thing is. So we just use radio. Like when I'm working on the house sometimes, I go in the attic to do work. I hand my wife a radio. Hey, I'm going up in the attic. Don't let me die. call 911 if you don't hear from me. You hear me fall down up there, call me and make sure that I'm okay, and I will call back to you, or I will call you and let you know that I'm okay, one way or the other. But we will communicate like that. It's just everyday life kind of stuff. And I'm always just commuting to work, talking on the radio. I'm a presence on the radio on those GMRS frequencies. Even when we're camping, I'm always calling out to see if there's anybody out there. I always do my research, finding those repeaters like we talked about, knowing your frequencies, right? And my radios are always ready, and I practice it on a daily basis. And we can talk about other ways that I do that another time. But you regularly test your radio, practice it with your family and your friends. Make it normal in your life, and it will not be awkward when the time comes and you absolutely need it. So that was point number 3. So now, point number 4, stay calm. None of these things matter if you freak out. You have to stay calm and keep a clear head if something goes wrong. Think about the hurricane situation, right? You hunker down, the hurricane moves on, things are wiped out, and you have to snap your head back on a swivel, assess the damage, assess the situation, and then you start thinking through things like, hey, do I have resources? I know I don't have power. I know I don't have phone. Screw that. It's out the window. Let me figure out what I do have. Do you have a generator? Let's get the generator up and running. Do you have shelter? Do you have food? Do you have water? All those things. And, while you're figuring those things out, I would expect that the first thing you grabbed was your either or both your radio to start finding out what's going on in the news. Hopefully in the middle of a hurricane, you've already got something like this, or a weather radio, something. I would hope to God that everyone listening to this has some sort of public communication device. Even at my house, I have an old school TV antenna. They're all digital these days. It works great. You don't need anything but an antenna, a cable, and a newer TV. Probably any TV that still works these days will be digital capable to receive those digital signals. But keeping calm, assessing that, and then grabbing your handheld radio and sticking that on your side, and start implementing what you practice. Hey, I'm going to call out on my repeater. If you're a GMRS user, is my repeater active? They're usually backup powered. Not all of them are, but most of them have some level of backup power. So are they still operational? So hey, calling out, and are you getting that hit back? Are you getting that tail squelch back? Okay, the repeater's still active, so now I know I need to keep this thing on, stick it on my side, and every now and then call out, see if anybody's listening. There's a communication plan too. That's another video we'll talk about. That's really practicing communication that we'll go into detail on. But staying calm is the main thing. Implement what you practice and put it into practice. And I know this sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It's not really at all. that big a deal. It's not weird. You can make it weird. If you don't do any of this stuff, it's all going to feel weird because you're going to pick your radio up. You're going to pick up your Battlefield radio that you've had for 8 years. You bought it off Amazon because somebody told you that to be prepared for something you need it, but they forgot to tell you you need to learn how to use it too. And you have no idea. There's 100,000 zeros and numbers on there. Like, what do I do? Like, who do I call? You're not going to figure that out in the heat of the moment. You're going to hit scan, and it's going to take you days. And the chances of you actually hitting somebody who's still talking when that search gets around to them is slim to none. So don't rely on that. Practice your radios. Stay calm, right? So knowing your frequencies, knowing where to go, having a communication plan. That's one of those things. It's part of that. But knowing your frequencies, keeping your radio ready at all times, keeping it available like a gun or anything else for any emergency. Practice that communication plan, and then stay calm so that you can put those points together. So I hope this helps. I hope this gives you some real life scenarios. GMRS, people play, they talk about it, they don't really do it. Not everybody does it. Excuse me. Not everybody does it for preparation. Some people just do it for fun because they like talking on the radio. They don't want to get a ham license, and it's kind of like a gateway to ham, or they just use it for whatever, casual use, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, something happens. These are the things that need to be put in place before an emergency hits. Hope this helps. This will be, I guess, video 3 or something that we've got on this radio series. So I just wanted to just give some tips. Real life, real world, real in your face examples. Not a whole lot of detail, but you can research this stuff yourself. You can look this up. Hurricanes, just Google it, just like I did, right? Times where GMRS saved the day. Not what I Googled, but you get the idea. Nonetheless, it's a powerful tool. I think GMRS is one of the more powerful in the, you're going to touch more people that are not licensed in an emergency. You're probably going to have more people calling out on that, very possibly. But, that's the value of it, is you have that huge overlap with non-licensed folks. So 27 minutes in, I know I jabbered a lot of information to cover there, but you could talk about this stuff for days to really get the point across, but I think you get me. So yeah, that was 3 scenarios that where GMRS did save the day, and there was 4 tips that I got out of that completely, because you're going to need that. Thanks guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again.